A UN climate advisor blames climate change and everything else on white men. Air travel hits another snag after a United flight is diverted due to potty issues. And California Democrats are introducing new ways for workers to skirt work. It's time for my losers of the week. Then, Puff Daddy, Diddy, Sean Combs, whatever you want to call him, well, he's in a hot mess right now after his homes were raided in a federal sex ring bust. I've got sexual abuse attorney Reagan Charleston on the case. The show starts now. You know, a lot of us are struggling to keep up with everyday bills. Everything is still really expensive. Credit card interest rates are insane, and most of us are carrying a balance from month to month. If you own a home, I want you to call my friends at American Financing. Interest rates have dropped into the fives, the lowest they've been in a long time. They're saving their customers an average of $854 a month by tapping into their home's equity and wiping out high-interest credit card debt. $854 a month is like a $10,000 raise. American Financing never charges any upfront fees, and that's why they have over 7,200 Google reviews and a 4.7-star rating. They've helped thousands of customers save real money and put themselves into a better financial position. And if you call today, you might not have to make next month's mortgage payment. So call today to see what they can do for you. 866-890-8585. That's 866-890-8585. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net. So folks, we started the week with April Fool's Day, but our country, led by Brandon, is such a joke. We are living in April Fool's Groundhog Day. So on that note, it's time for my losers of the week. First up is UN climate advisor Ayesha Sidka, who has taken on the hefty task of being even more insufferable than Greta Thunberg, and she succeeded.
The climate crisis is man-made. And it's not just man-made, it's white man-made. It is the result of capitalism, years of colonialism, years of racial oppression. And so if you want to get involved, the way that we save our planet is when we protect the most vulnerable communities among us. And this includes Black trans women. This includes Indigenous peoples.
I don't know what the bar is to be a UN climate advisor, but I'm going to guess it's pretty damn low. Perhaps all you need to be is angry, racist, anti-man, and anti-white, remarkably close to the qualifications to be part of the Biden administration or on MSNBC. But beyond that endearing little clip I played for you, it turns out, and I know you'll be just shocked to see this, but Ayesha has a history of posting really hateful rhetoric directed towards white people and specifically white men. You know, if you ever find yourself too happy, joyous, or delightful, I suggest taking up liberalism with a side of veganism, as that seems to be the quickest way to kill just all of your joy. But speaking of unpleasantries, air travel, like everything else, has really gone to crap over the last 3.5 years. Quite literally, in the case of this recent United flight from Germany to San Francisco after the plane was diverted due to a potty issue. A couple of hours into the flight, the smelly contents of at least one of the lavatories overflowed from the tank and poured into the cabin, forcing the aircraft to return to Germany. You know, as unpleasant as the overflowing toilet must have been, those passengers were headed for San Francisco anyway. So if they have a strong aversion to human feces, maybe suggest picking a new destination. But while we're on the topic of California and how craptastic it is, here's another reason, and it's also right out of San Francisco. Assembly member Matt Haney of San Francisco introduced a bill centered around the premise that less work should be expected from workers. The bill is dubbed the right to disconnect and would give employees a legal excuse to ignore their bosses after normal work hours. The bill would require non-working hours to be established and allow employees to file a complaint punishable by fine for employers who didn't adhere to the right to disconnect. So first it was quiet quitting, and now this. Listen, I understand a proper work-life balance, and I understand the social and professional code of conduct, but honestly, this has all gotten so whiny and so extreme, because the fact of the matter is this. If you want to excel, you want to get to the top, you want to earn the right to your work-life balance, then you're probably going to be expected to communicate with your boss after your work hours. If you're not willing to do that, someone else who wants it more probably is. And yeah, this is likely driven by young people who have been conditioned to believe TikTok influencing from a sugar daddy's yacht is a viable career. You know, the greatest generation stormed the beaches of Normandy, many of them at just 18 years old. And this generation bitches about answering emails after 5 p.m. You think the Chinese would implement a right to disconnect rule? No, not a chance. And that's why they're eating our lunch. But those are my losers of the week. Moving on now to a big loser from last week, Diddy, who had his Miami and Los Angeles homes raided by federal agents. The raids are connected to allegations of sex trafficking and sexual assault and the solicitation and distribution of illegal narcotics and firearms. So how much trouble could Puff be in for? Joining me now to break it down is sexual abuse attorney Reagan Charleston. So the world has been talking about the Diddy situation, most notably 50 Cent, who has been on a real tangent on this issue for a long time. But, you know, anytime a celebrity seemingly goes down or is in hot water, it's going to garner a lot of international attention. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, when you saw these allegations, when you saw this all go down as a sexual abuse attorney, what was your first thought?
Well, my first thought here is about the victims. And I work in sex abuse. We have clients all over the country. And what we've seen are look back windows that pop up through state laws all across the country, one of which was brought in New York State. And that would have been the state statute that several of his victims filed under. In particular, Cassie, that was the first complaint that was filed, notably settled within hours of being filed. I think that that's very telling. We knew that more would be coming, and sure enough, before that window closed on November 23rd, a second complaint was filed. Thereafter, we saw several more that were filed under the city ordinance, which is the Gender Violence Act, and that allows victims to bring suits regardless of the statute of limitations. That window closes the next year.
So I want to talk about some of the allegations, and so people understand what kind of constitutes a sex trafficking ring. I mean, that's what some of the accusations involving Diddy involve. And so what does it actually take to be accused of running a trafficking ring? Because we got a lot of information when it comes to Epstein and Epstein Island and all of that, probably the most notable case of this. And so a lot of people are drawing comparisons between those allegations and these allegations, so that my audience understands how many complaints does it take, how much evidence does it take to make that kind of a charge on somebody for something as large as really a heading or being a part of a ring of sorts.
Okay, so what we're seeing right now, the raids that are taking place are obviously evidence gathering raids. We've had in those complaints that were filed allegations of sex trafficking, and that is a violation of the federal TVPA, which is the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Therein, you're going to see two possibilities of protected parties, whether it's minors that have been trafficked for the purposes of sexual acts, or it's adults that have been trafficked using force, coercion, duress, fraud. Both of those allegations have been brought forth in the complaints that have been filed. The Jones complaint, which is the Little Rod complaint, has numerous reports of allegations, both as it relates to minors and adults. Also, as we've seen in the complaints, they're rife with allegations concerning the videotaping of these acts. I know that when the feds went in, they're specifically looking for the video evidence. That is going to be crucial in bringing a claim against Mr. Combs as it relates to the sex trafficking charges and also the RICO charges that he likely will face.
When we're talking about some of the evidence here and the raids themselves, you know, obviously this was very public. The media was surely tipped off to this because there was, you know, footage of it readily available, and it caused a real media sensation, you know, for good reason. This is somebody that's a mega celebrity, and these are mega allegations. But in terms of the raid itself, most recently, one of Diddy's exes, the mother of his children, came out and said, hey, listen, the way that they did this, the way that these federal agents conducted this, the way that they acted, they used excessive force. She also made claims of racism, that this was done because they're young black men. It would have not been done to somebody who was maybe of the white race. When you're looking at the footage, and that I'm sure that you saw, it's been played everywhere, we're playing it now. Is this something that you feel like, for your expertise, is pretty standard, or do you feel like because it was Diddy that maybe it was excessive or maybe more performative than it would have been for an average Joe?
I mean, it certainly looks militarized. Let's just call it what it is. It looked excessive to the outsider. However, these complaints discuss weapons, guns, firearms, drugs. At that point, measures have to be taken to protect the officers. There's always an element of surprise. You don't want to tip off the defendants or possible defendants in this matter. We have to make it clear that Mr. Combs has not yet been charged with anything. He is just named defendant in civil suits. But here they're going into his home and likely looking for digital evidence, physical evidence, anything that can point them in the right direction. The complaints that have been filed have provided the feds with not just breadcrumbs, but a roadmap. This latest complaint that was filed, the Jones complaint, lays forth everything they need to go after Mr. Combs as it relates to the trafficking violations and the RICO violations.
So if this all goes down as it's going down, this is going to be handled in the state of New York, even though the raids were in Miami and Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Well, civil cases are in New York, where the federal, if there is federal charges brought against Mr. Combs, I'm not quite sure yet. But the 5 cases have been filed in various New York courts.
So as far as this goes, and for the federal agents to be as involved as they were, and for this to be as large of a scale as it was with both of the homes raided, it would seem like they probably had a lot of evidence, that it wasn't just hearsay, that they've probably been collecting things, breadcrumbs, as you mentioned, for quite some time in order for them to get to this scale that they were going to go ahead and raid 2 homes on such a public scale. Would that be accurate to assume that they've got a lot of stuff ready to go?
Well, they had to have probable cause, and 2 federal judges signed off on these raids, and they just don't do these things lightly. So certainly there was enough evidence to undertake the raids. 2 federal judges signed off, and I think that that's telling that they already have quite a bit of evidence against Mr. Combs.
How hard is it to get celebrities who are well-connected and wealthy? How hard is it to get something like this across the finish line, assuming that he is guilty or that there is something there? You know, obviously very well-publicized similar case with R. Kelly. A lot of evidence there. It took a really long time. I think 2 documentary series as well before there was ever anything that happened to R. Kelly. So it seems like a lot of the times when mega celebrities are involved, things tend to drag out. Maybe things are swept under the rug. Are you confident that in this case or in any case that celebrities are treated just as any average person would be treated in the same circumstance?
You know, I can't say that I believe that celebrities are treated equally. That would be against everything that I believe. And as it relates to my claimants and my survivors and victims that I represent, in the civil context, the standard of proof is lower than in the criminal context. So you'll see the civil cases move forward in a quicker fashion than you will in, say, a federal investigation or a federal case. That would be why it takes longer. But there are comparisons being drawn to the R. Kelly case. But as it relates to the RICO charges, R. Kelly was just one person. There is a large named group, a collective that has been established, and it does look like they'll be able to make a case that there was an enterprise. These charges are very significant. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And certainly in the civil context, as it relates to this latest complaint, it seems that he's brought his receipts. I mean, just going through the filings, there are pictures, screenshots linked to almost every allegation. It's fascinating to me to read through. You don't typically see things filed like this. And over and over and over again, this survivor claimant is noting that he has hundreds of hours of footage. He also notes that Mr. Combs had a habit of recording all of his various freak-offs, as he calls them, his trysts, all of these parties and wild occasions that were criminal in nature. And I'm sure that that's what will be sought in this investigation to bring forth these charges. And I think that there will be a lot of high profile people that get dragged into this. Already we've got Usher has been dragged into the fray. Meek Mill, you've got J-Lo referenced in the complaint. This is going to be fascinating to see how it plays out on a national and international stage.
Yeah, I think just today, Ashton Kutcher possibly expecting to be named or a part of it in some bit and piece. Justin Bieber's name has been brought up. Prince Harry's name has been brought up. I mean, this is large scale when you talk about the number of people in Hollywood that are brought up for one reason or another. Doesn't mean that they did anything, but just that maybe they bear witness to something or that they know something or that they're attached to this in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, it's going to be pretty sensational. Just in terms of the charges, because I think people oftentimes, they hear the legal jargon, they hear the accusations, and they don't really know what it would mean in layman's terms. So the allegations against Diddy is that he's running some kind of a ring transporting minors or people of age for sexual purposes. So would that mean, if we're talking about this thing, the allegations themselves, not that he did it, just what's being alleged, that Diddy was somehow the mastermind or the ringleader of transporting young people or people of age to different places, moving them around for sexual purposes, using them as sex workers? Is that what the basis of this allegation is when it comes to just layman's terms, that people can understand what this actually looks like?
Well, if not the head, he's certainly involved in the enterprise and the group that were frequently moving individuals across state lines, rather, for the purposes of either forcing, coercing, or having them participate in illegal sex acts. Another important thing is that there are allegations that minors were involved in this, which implicates matters of CSAM. If these, incidents and occasions were recorded and there's digital evidence, that's contraband. We're looking at the implication of all different kinds of federal laws and state laws that will come into play with this. There are revenge porn laws. Those have been cited in the complaints filed by the victims. It's going to be fascinating. So what you're looking at when you look at the TVPA, there are two categories. You have minors, and that does not require any force, duress, coercion, fraud. And then you have anyone over 18. And there you would have to have some element of force, coercion, duress involved. And that would distinguish the two groups.
As somebody that does this for a living, I'm sure that it doesn't make your job any easier when in other cases you have women who allege things without evidence, or then, it turns out that maybe some of their claims are false or exaggerated. What comes to mind is somebody I've had on my show, actually two people, athletes, Trevor Bauer being one of them. We took a deep dive into this situation on my show, obviously went down in California where his accuser alleged all these things, and then it ruined his life, it ruined his career. So just from that perspective and talking about some of these high profile cases and doing what you do, can you talk to me about the ramifications and the consequences that come along with false accusations or exaggerated accusations or revenge accusations, people that are making claims because they want attention or they want money? Walk me through that and what it does to your profession and how it impacts what you do.
So first off, as an attorney who represents the victims of sexual assault, I have to say that we vet our cases. It is my responsibility and the responsibility of my colleagues to ensure that our claimants are actually telling the truth. We do our homework, we investigate their claim, we do not take meritless claims. At the end of the day, you still have to prove your case, which is the second layer of all of this. When you bring forth a suit against someone, you have to prove your claim against them. You have to put forth evidence. This will go before a judge and jury. Yes, the accusations can definitely damage someone's career or character, but there is a day in court that will be had. But as it relates to me personally, I vet my cases. I interview my clients. I look at the evidence that they will put forth. And we frequently turn away clients whose claims we don't think are meritless or have merit.
Right. I'm wondering from your personal perspective and opinion, when it turns out that somebody does levy a false claim or accusation, and then even though these people have their day in court, and no charges filed or no legal consequences. Do you think that the people that actually put forth these false accusations should suffer any consequences? Because it seems to me like when false accusations are thrown out there, it doesn't seem like the people making the accusations that are false suffer really any penalty or consequence. And I'm wondering if you think that there should be something that allows those that have been falsely, accused of something to have some kind of retribution to make them whole, because it really can destroy their lives, even if they're not charged, even if they're not convicted.
Well, certainly, and there are different legal avenues that people who have been wrongfully accused can pursue, but it's also a slippery slope because we already see that survivors of sexual assault are afraid to come forward. They're afraid to tell their story. They're afraid to bring their claims forward in the court of law or to police. That's why you see these look-back windows being enacted all over the country because, the data and science shows that people typically take decades to process and come forward with their claims. It is very difficult for someone to come forward and tell their story. And I think that if you start retaliating against those who are unable to maybe come up with enough evidence to prove their claim, you will deter those who have been very wrongfully treated to come forward.
Yeah. It's just really unfortunate when people make false accusations for money or for fame, because it really damages people that have actually been through something extreme, been through something traumatizing, horrible, life-changing for them. Thank you for what you do and standing up for those victims of abuse. Obviously, it's a problem that's not going away in our country. It's sad that it takes high-profile cases to bring sex trafficking and sexual assault to the forefront, but at least it can raise some awareness. Thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that does it for the show tonight. Catch me tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on Hannity, tomorrow morning on Mornings with Maria on Fox Business, and tomorrow afternoon, noon Eastern on Outnumbered on Fox News. Until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care.